Goeiemorgen mense. Okay, so today's video we're just gonna, as you can see it's quite long behind me, so we're gonna go over some of the, at least I'm gonna start with some of the pros and cons to Kikuyu and Bermuda. I'm gonna include some LM stuff here as well because I've got LM grass too, and that does really well. So yeah, let's get into that. So let's just have a look at the general lawn at this point in time. So from the last video, so the crabgrass video, at the end of that video I sort of did a light sculpt on this lawn, and about 2 or 3 days after that I mowed it again. This is now the result after that. So I think we're talking like 6 days or so from the time of me recording that previous video and putting it up to now. So this grass is growing at a rate still. Now what I wanted to go over was just the obvious stuff when it comes to Kikuyu and Bermuda. Now the first is that you can see that sort of area over there, that's mainly Kikuyu. And you start going here, you get a lot of mix of Kikuyu and Bermuda. The dark green colors is all Bermuda, and the medium green colors is mainly all Kikuyu. And what you'll notice at this distance, sort of taking a look at a distance, is that the Kikuyu grows taller than the Bermuda, faster, and is more chunky looking and not a fine lawn, in my opinion. So what does this really mean? Well, if you think about grass only becomes a lawn once it's been mowed. So what do you then want from your lawn? And you know, there's no real right answer. It's up to everyone. It's actually mostly up to your climate, but the essential effect is you can put in whatever you want into your garden. You just got to look after it at different rates, and you know, work with that in accordance. So what should you be taking from it? Well, in a nutshell, Kikuyu is much more difficult to look after, in my opinion, even though it takes nothing for the stuff to grow. It needs water. I've got a couple of people on my list that just don't do anything to their lawns. They mow it, so it's considered a lawn, and that's it. They don't fertilize, they don't water it other than whatever falls from the heavens. And yeah, then I barely know anyone else with Bermuda grass. One of my neighbors down the street has the most fantastic Bermuda I think I've ever seen, and he keeps it probably at the sort of 6-7 sub 10 mil mark all the time. I never see it long ever. I think once I've seen it where it looked like it was getting some abnormal sort of length tips. The next time I walked past there, it was back to normal again. So he keeps a keen eye on that lawn. So for me, as far as a lawn goes, I still think Bermuda is a much better lawn. It's easier to maintain. It uses much less water than Kikuyu. Without water, Kikuyu does look really trashy. Without water, Bermuda kind of looks just mediocre, but fine. It doesn't grow too tall. It doesn't get into your beds nearly as fast as what Kikuyu does. And when it gets into your beds, it doesn't start this sort of mass creeping vine looking effect that the Kikuyu does, which I really dislike. So let's have a bit of a closer look at these grass types, and it'll give you a better idea of what you're really looking at. Okay, so here is a good example. So the Bermuda is long. You can see it growing against the edges. And I think for the first time in a very long time, I can actually see there is Bermuda seed coming up. It's been ages since I saw that. Now this is long. I think the Bermuda is sitting, that's easily 40 millimeters. It's coming up to about my second knuckle, so it's got to be 40-50 mils. The Kikuyu is even longer, but look at the Kikuyu in comparison. Now this little patch here has some Bermuda underneath it, so the Kikuyu is even looking better than what it would if it didn't have that Bermuda underneath it. And it looks rubbish. So when you let the Kikuyu grow out, so in other words, if you only mow once a week, you're going to have kind of this result. Unless you put down maybe a plant growth regulator, but for the cost of that, why would you? Versus this. This is a darker green. The leaf is smaller, so when you do damage it, let's say you're cutting with a rotary mower and you damage the tips like mine, you can, I don't know if I can really get it on this, but you can clearly tell the tips are sort of frayed. So they are all damaged and still look better than the Kikuyu does damaged, because the Kikuyu's leaf is bigger. So this is very valuable information. Now, Bermuda does get the same sort of stalky effect, just above ground level that Kikuyu does. But Kikuyu, especially if you're mowing with a cylinder mower, you kind of squash that pad of grass flat the whole time while you're busy mowing. And remember, there's a front roller and a rear roller, and the cylinder falls in this, between those two, and you're essentially squashing the lawn flat, and you're trying to mow what's in between that first roller hitting the lawn all the time, which is why you should be mowing your grass. Well, it's one of the reasons why you should be mowing your grass when it's dry. But now Bermuda, by nature, is much closer to the ground and much finer anyway. So as you roll over it, the chance of you flicking up more blades is far better than on Kikuyu. So you will always, and you can argue with me until you're blue in the face, Bermuda is going to give you a better fine lawn than Kikuyu. However, Kikuyu it's a dense, strong lawn. I mean, nobody can deny it. I just don't like how much water it needs to actually look good. You can fertilize, you can do all sorts of cool things, make it really look supreme, and especially with a plant growth regulator on it. But you think of the cost of plant growth, geez, I can't say that today. The cost, let's turn this thing, the cost of a plant growth regulator for Kikuyu lawn just isn't worth it, because you don't really have to put down so much fertilizer and all the rest. If you think about $800 a bottle for plant growth regulator, roughly, you're going to be sitting with, that's months worth of fertilizer. Now, rather control how much nitrogen you put down, trade it off maybe a bit of iron or something else to it that will help with green up versus growth, or just better fertilizers, or do what I do and use a moderate balanced fertilizer, let's say lawn balanced fertilizer. If you go with something with equal numbers, you're going to have too much phosphate in your soil very soon. So rather do more applications of a lighter weight fertilizer and a liquid fertilizer that's foliar, let's say that would be a primary foliar type agent. Put the stuff down, let it immediately react with the leaf, and then that way you've got a good color all the time, but without inducing too much growth. And that applies for Kikuyu and Bermuda as well. So on both scales, the Bermuda is still using less water per the norm, and yeah, Kikuyu still uses more. I can't give you, other than that really thick mat that's going to break down less quickly. It's going to be more durable if you have the 30-40 millimeter real mode Kikuyu lawn. It's going to be hard to destroy it, whereas Bermuda is going to be a little bit easier than that. Per se, I haven't put Bermuda through those tests yet, so I can't give you that as conclusive, let's say, evidence. Yeah, let's have a look at Alem just to break this conversation just a bit. So you can see, there's bits and pieces here because I've been pulling out Alem and Kikuyu runners all over the place. But if you have a look here, this Alem, there's a bit of Kikuyu seed coming up from underneath here. The Alem's above it, so it is suppressing the Kikuyu quite a lot. But I've been trying to pull out these Alem runners, and they are, this area is so dense. I actually do believe that if you have like an open sun area like what I do here, and even going up into the shade there with the trees at the bottom, that's probably the least amount of shade that I have during the course of a day, just by the way, to give you an idea of how much shade I see in the lawn. And then any time past now, this shadow that you see here creeps up all the way inside the side of the lawn as the day goes by. But anyway, the LM, I think, cutting at the sort of 30-40 millimeter mark, and on my front lawn, which is in shade but not as much, there's not as much traffic on it, it does just as well as this, but this being in the sun is just a bit thicker and a bit stronger, if I can term it like that. It reacts well to fertilizers, doesn't use lots of water, comes out of dormancy in winter quick, it doesn't go into dormancy too quickly. It's kind of at a similar rate to Kikuyu, which by the way is another relevant point. I think, this is hard for me to prove, but I think that the Bermuda goes into dormancy faster than Kikuyu and comes out of dormancy later than Kikuyu. However, I tested it the wrong way around with this last lot, because what I did was I tried to induce, I tried to come out of the dormancy for this, coming into the spring now, by not fertilizing too heavy. I wanted to see how much we could do with just water. That's Kikuyu's pro. The minute though that I put down high quality, high nitrogen fertilizer, the Bermuda overtook the Kikuyu instantly. So the Kikuyu came out of dormancy quickly. It looked like it was doing the right stuff. The Bermuda looked a little bit iffy. It was kind of giving the whole lawn a bit of a brownish sort of tinge to it. The minute though that a high nitrogen fertilizer went down, but a good quality liquid fertilizer, so for me it was the NC32, that kicked the Bermuda into high gear, and then it immediately overtook the Kikuyu from that. So my assumption is if I just started that much earlier, so if I had pumped a bit of water onto the lawn, so let's say kept a wetting agent going through winter, or a soil conditioner at the very least, and then pushed high nitrogen fertilizer like the 1st of August, it would have been a full Bermuda lawn by the beginning of September. I'm 99% sure of it. If I'd kept those mows short, and if I'd started doing what I'm doing now, I'm sort of pulling out all the Kikuyu runners. So it's looking a bit crappy at the moment, but it is what it is. Let's try and find some runners and have a look. Okay, here we have a real, just move out the light. Here we have a really poor example. It's like a bad area of lawn. There's a whole mix match of Kikuyu and Bermuda. And again, you can see that the Bermuda is a darker green. The Kikuyu is like a medium green. The Kikuyu, actually, we had rain last night and it seems to be getting a little bit of a yellowish tinge to it. And that's often from nutrient washout. I haven't put down high nitrogen fertilizer here in a little while. I think the last that I did was when we did the herbicide, the post 3-day fertilizing. I think that was the last time that this got anything on it. So that's now about 2 weeks ago. And if you look, this is now what happens with Kikuyu. When this wants to start doing its thing, it comes up. Bloody flies. It comes up and it does this. You got to keep on it with the mowing, and that's it. For mowing is supposed to be pleasurable. This is the whole point of having a nice lawn, is that you get that satisfaction from mowing and seeing a good result. Kikuyu is work. I don't like that. I'm lazy. But the LM looks better when it's long than Kikuyu. So if you're going to have this long lawn, it actually doesn't even grow nearly as fast as Kikuyu does. Rather have LM. I think that if you can keep it just thick enough and actually feed it, because I think a lot of people that have LM actually don't do anything with it. They don't look after the LM, which they should. Then I think LM's actually a really good low maintenance lawn versus Kikuyu. I've got to be honest, and it will grow better in the shade. So you don't have to do an LM Kikuyu mix. You just do LM, and then actually look after it. Anyway, so that's what you're looking at is Bermuda, and this is a bit of a crummy section of Bermuda for me. And you can tell there's a bit of, okay, but this is all now a combination of things. There were a lot of weeds here, so that could also just be the residual effect from that. But look at how the Kikuyu grows up the wall. Now I have to edge trim because of it. The Bermuda barely looks like anything is happening over there. And of course, if you go and mow here and get this down and get this back into a nice thick mat, you're going to have this little piece here that you have to get rid of. But it's going to look far neater than that. So, why? Why do you want to do that to yourself? It's just another little part of it. That's Bermuda, nice and tidy. And this is the same growing times, obviously, because this is all mowed the same. Then you get a little runner from leaving it just, this is 3 days, guys. It's ridiculous. Why do you want that? It doesn't make any sense to me. So many countries call this a weed, and for years I was like, whatever, Kikuyu is the best lawn ever. And I was wrong, Now I want to consider perennial ryegrass. It might be a little bit of a wussy grass for our region, but it looks nice. I might consider it in an area where I don't get too much traffic. I don't know what, maybe I might be most likely putting down a high quality Bermuda seed over here in the next few months, or perennial ryegrass. I don't know. I haven't really decided. There's one other grass type that I'm thinking about too, but I first want to run the course. Remember, I've put down only one application of 3 parts of my herbicide treatment I want to see it work to completion first, for the sake of letting you guys know that you can get this result. And by the way, I have actually applied the same herbicides onto my LM grass. LM grass is taking it perfectly fine, so it doesn't state it in the instructions, but mine hasn't had a negative effect. In fact, the LM grass stayed greener than the Kikuyu did, and the Kikuyu's on the page as being safe with those herbicides. So I think maybe because LM grass is more a South African thing, maybe they just haven't tested enough for it, and they would have tested something like buffalo, for example, which I think a different region of the world is St. Augustine. So LM is now a derivative of that. I think it might be the boss. Okay, so we had a look at a Kikuyu runner. Let's find a Bermuda runner and give you an idea of how ugly the differences are. Okay, so here's a very good example. So you saw the Bermuda runner. This is now the Kikuyu runner already. This is now Bermuda. Even though this can be invasive, it's like a bit of a, I hope it doesn't offend anyone, but it's a bit of a girly invasion. I mean, I don't mind if this invades. You know, it's tiny, it's barely an eyesore. The tips are still a perfect kind of green, and this is like it's not even like in the best condition, and it looks neat. Why would you want that? Look at it. Why do you want that? Yes, of course, when you go and build up on it and you keep cheating on your videos by rolling over it with a reel mower and on your photographs before you put it on Facebook groups and such, you thicken this whole blooming lot up, and you're just seeing all the clean tips that have been neatly cut. But it's a lie. Then you got to do these videos about, you know, heavy sculpting and dethatching and all this kind of stuff. And I don't have this, not even where I've got the thickest bit of Kikuyu, there's in a dip. And you always get that bit of extra green because now you're missing that. That dip has always stayed a little bit longer than everywhere else. There's no mat there. And the reason is because I change my height of cut regularly, which is what you're supposed to do with Kikuyu and Bermuda. I can't say all warm season grasses because buffalo and LM is not really the same thing. But in effect, it is good to change your height of cut, I would say, with most grasses regularly. So for me, just by default, I'm not even saying this is like a routine thing for me, I have most of the time, about once a month, given this what I would call a light sculpt. So I take it to a point where the Kikuyu yellows out just a bit and the Bermuda does nothing. So if I took it, just even imagine it was just Bermuda, just keep the Bermuda slightly uncomfortable once a month. It takes about 2 or 3 days and it's recovered. That's it. So you got, you know, if you cut it on a Sunday, the Sunday afternoon you got a bit of a discoloration. Monday, Tuesday, you're not even on the grass, you're at work. By the time you get to the next mowing session, which is probably going to be like a Friday afternoon for most people, or you get home early sometime in the week and you decide you're going to mow again on a Wednesday or Thursday, by that next mow, your lawn is fine again. Kikuyu and Bermuda in those circumstances when you do that sculpt. So, you know, just why. Anyway, this video seems a bit ranty. You can tell here, these little yellow patches, that's weeds dying off. And then, okay, let me show you something that I haven't shown you yet. This is my land of weeds. I put down herbicide. I put down this mix yesterday. I've been testing all sorts of different herbicides in the background to try and see what I wanted to have done here. I thought about Roundup and I just decided against it because the result from what I'm getting here is so good. I'd rather use it there because my intention is that I may want to level this all out and get grass to grow in there. But eventually what's going to happen at some point is that I'm going to kill off all of this lawn. So it's going to get glyphosate on it and I'm going to kill off all of it and I'm going to put down some new seed after we've finished with this herbicide treatment. So at least 2 more months, and then I've got to be careful because we'll be in autumn. But in South Africa, I mean, I'm in Pretoria, we could probably still do it. So that'll be a fun challenge because then I'll have to have, if it's Bermuda, it's going to be about 2 weeks before you see germination of the seed. We've got maybe a month and a half. We've got about 8 weeks before we hit weather and drought that it's not going to be so lack of a seed or for young grass to tolerate. So it'll be an incredibly good example or a good challenge to get that going. Anyway, let's see what happens there. Might actually be a good time for ryegrass, who knows. Okay, so last thing here, let me find you an alem runner so that you can see how it looks. So here's what it looks like under my alem grass. Let me get up nice and close for you. It is, oh, my soil is looking brilliant. As you can tell, there's barely, oh, I don't know if you can tell, I've seen lots of really crummy looking lawns full of whatever that people want to call thatch down there, because they don't mow low enough, regularly enough. It's got nothing to do with dethatching. I would say that's probably about 70 mils, the blade total. Obviously the lawn's length, if I just look at that, that's about the sort of 50 mil mark that we were talking about earlier on, and this is now long, so I'll trim it back to the sort of 30ish mil mark. But this is what its runner looks like. And remember, buffalo and alem grass only grow on stolons, not rhizomes. So what they do is they grow from the root system. It makes that little sprout, it germinates, it comes up, it starts running, and then as it runs and it finds soil, it drops these little nodes, become roots, and then that drops down and it forms the density and the strength. And you could tell now it wasn't easy for me to get this out, and there were a few, in fact I've pulled it out, you can't even tell where I've pulled the thing out from. It's right. So that's a good strong lawn. There's now a fully grown blade, so that's kind of just about where you would cut it. And then these now that are longer are only just getting their little shoots going, and you can see that they were mowed at some point, so it's probably sitting on the top and it got nabbed by the mower. And obviously if you mowed with a cylinder mower you would have a cleaner cut even on alem. And you know, with a sort of standard range series like professional mower and what have you, you don't have to cut short. You can still mow it sort of 30 to 50 millimeter mark if I'm not mistaken. I think I'm going to call the video just on this, my little rant between Kikuyu and Bermuda. For me, a lawn is supposed to be something that you have control over, because you're trying to bonsai your grass into something neat and tidy and beautiful looking, and that for me is Bermuda. And in this circumstance, you know, the Bermuda versus Kikuyu thing. However, if you wanted just a neat looking grass and you're not too worried about the X, Y's and Z's, I've got to say the least maintenance, the best look, and still has some durability, it's not that it has no durability, is alem grass, alem Berea. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and yeah, ask some questions. We'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.